I've learned, at least for myself, that I have to stop accepting things as a failure and more so accept that was my fate in this situation.
I say be thankful for the small steps as well, because you may not have hit that big goal, but there's still beauty in taking the small steps to get to the end goal.
The merits of reflection and introspection are both very well known. That's why on this week's episode of the Infusion BreakDown Show, the Breakdown crew sat down with two very special guests, Mr. Larry Whitaker Jr. and Mr. Montae Taylor, to discuss what do we attribute our biggest successes and failures in life to. Let's see what we come up with. Before we get started on today's episode, I'd like to introduce to you our Black-owned Business of the Week, where we showcase quality Black-owned businesses for you to support every week. This week's business is Tay's Honey by Montae Taylor. Tay's Honey is a 40 Villages affiliate business that specializes in legally grown CBD-infused honey. CBD can help with inflammation, is a natural antioxidant, and has antipsychotic properties. Not to mention, honey tastes great. If you want to try some of Tay's Honey and reap the benefits, check out the link in their bio.
So today's question is going to be, what do you attribute your biggest successes to, and what do you attribute your biggest failures to? Comment below, let us know. Today's guests also include Larry Whitaker and Montae Taylor.
Hey everybody, how you doing? My name is Montae Taylor, CEO of 40 Villages, as well as Tay's Honey. Glad to be here.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Larry Whitaker Jr. I am the founder of Starve the Ego, Feed the Soul, which is an inspirational and clothing brand. And I'm also the co-founder of Mind Your Business Pop-Up Shop. And we hold pop-up shops around the 757 area with hopes and dreams and plans of traveling outside the state. And I am glad to be here as well.
Thank you for joining us, guys.
So to make sure I'm understanding the question correctly, we're saying, what do we blame our successes on, correct?
Right, what would you attribute your biggest successes to?
Well, I would attribute my biggest success to my family, first off, for keeping me focused when I lose focus. And that may sound a little cliche, but at least for my family, when it comes down to my business and running the store and things of that nature, if it wasn't for my family being there in the building stages of me starting this business and the building stages of me getting the store together, a lot of things would have fallen by the wayside, and I also would have lost track of my purpose and my reason for why I wanted to even do this. So yeah, I would definitely attribute it to my family.
My biggest success, the way I was answering the question is I looked at all my successes, and I can't really find out the biggest one per se, but I can attribute all my successes to 3 things that I came up with. And those 3 things are faith, direction, and willingness. And that's just what it all came down to. So I realized that I had to, when I thought back to all the successes from graduating top of my class in high school, first of all, I had leadership positions all the way up until now. So looking at those successes, graduating top of my class in high school, and then coming to college, doing great in college, and then graduating, getting my master's degree, being a school counselor overseas, doing pop-up shops, doing t-shirts. Like, it's just a lot. And I think that, not to brag, but I just really attribute that to faith. First of all, my faith is rooted in God because I grew up in the church. And like what Montae was saying, family is heavily rooted in my foundation to where I excel, because that's one thing that I always heard in my home is that, like, my dad will always tell me, I'm doing this so you can do better than me, so you can have better, so you can acquire things that I couldn't acquire. And so there was my faith in God, and then my faith in God allowed me to see who I was in God and allowed me to see how powerful I was. And so when it came to seeing things and envisioning what I wanted to be, what I defined success as, that was the first step. And then it became direction. What do I want to do with this power that I found? And then it became a willingness. Once I found that I have power, once I found what I want to do, am I willing to make the sacrifice to do it? So if I'm willing, then you see the success. And then if I'm not willing, then we'll talk about that later.
So those are really good, both good takes. I would say that my biggest success, the thing that I'm most proud of, is this podcast itself outside of myself as a person. And a large reason of the success of this podcast, I feel like, comes from my creativity and the desire to have actual meaningful connections. I think that's kind of what we were founded on. When I first spoke to Josh about the idea of putting a podcast together, is that we had noticed, like, we went back to, we go back to like our ODU days. We both met in like 2013, and we both weren't really the type of people to be content with just going out and partying on the weekends. Like, we would have meaningful conversations and try to think out, like, there was jokingly, we had an idea for a book called Why, in trying to explain the purpose of why anything was done. Why do we do anything? And I'm still open to the possibility. I don't know if it was completely a joke on your side, Josh, but I'm still down for it, the collaborative book. But go ahead.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Sounds good.
I should do it. I definitely think you should drop a book.
I could see it happening. I'm down for it, like I said. And so towards the end of college, I started noticing that there were people who I used to hang with as freshmen and people who I was currently friends with. Everybody was doing these amazing things. They were advancing their careers. They were entrepreneurs. And it was just awesome. And I started to realize that I know way too many talented people, and I'm way too talented myself to not be successful. So I kind of wanted to have a way to bring us together and leverage our skills and work together in order to achieve greater. So that's kind of like what we're founding the Infusion BreakDown Show. Like Josh, Desmond, and I could have a podcast myself, but it wouldn't be the Infusion BreakDown Show. We all have our own unique takes and perspectives on life and the subject matter that we discuss. And we contribute that and bring it together on a weekly basis and go over topics to encourage. We have two primary goals. The first of the goals is to make people think, and the second is to serve as a collaborative platform where people can promote their personal brands. And so for those very reasons, that's what I'm most proud of. It's something that I've stuck to consistently. We've been doing this since 2018, and I'm really excited for what the future has for this podcast. But that's just what I'm proud of as a personal goal. But then I look at my success in my career. Like, I became a project lead at my software company pretty quickly within the first, it was under a year, actually, just under a year. And I think I attribute that to, I had a different mindset. I think about work differently than most people do. Like, the company may pay me, but they work for me. So I'm there to grow as an individual and to collect skills in a way that serves myself. And I think when I was just talking to my manager earlier this week, he was saying the first thing he did when he became a manager, he sought out people on his team who had that kind of growth mindset in order to appoint them as project leads, because we're actually the people who are on the ground working with the customer. He's like a level removed from us a little bit. So he needs to have people with that kind of mindset in order to do that. So I think between the creativity, the desire for meaningful connections, and also that alternate mindset, I think that's what I would attribute most of my successes to.
I think for anybody listening, I think the best way to approach this question is make a list of your successes you've had like throughout your life, and then think about what you've accomplished, like what you got to accomplish that goal, and then do the same with your failures. But for me, when it comes to my successes, I would say I would attribute my wit and my mental sharpness to a lot of that, because I would definitely attribute that to me getting through like 2 years of graduate school and earning a master's degree, especially with the amount of work that graduate school can offer. And I think my ability to just get through assignments rather than procrastinate and or not do it at all helped me in that aspect. But I would procrastinate, don't get me wrong, but it would never be a full procrastination. I might be waiting until 10 p.m. to do this assignment, but while I'm procrastinating, I'm also thinking about what I'm going to do in each paragraph, like what I'm going to put in each paragraph, how it's going to be structured, how the whole paper is going to be structured. And I'm also planning how long the whole paper is going to take to begin with too. But another thing I would deem as success for myself is finding a career that I like and it actually means something. And what I attribute to that was my ability to take a chance, even though I was uncomfortable at first. And for the guests and people listening that don't know, I'm a behavioral therapist. I basically work with kids with autism. And growing up, I was uncomfortable and borderline scared of people with special needs. And I was just looking for a second job and completely unaware of what I wanted to do as a career in graduate school. And I got the job not expecting to. So I had to take the chance at that job. I was going to be like, even though I was going to be completely uncomfortable. So I had to take a chance at that job, even though that even happened. And I had to work through that during that training process to learn to be comfortable with the special needs kids and like learn to interact with them and everything like that. And another thing that helped me, I want to say, become more comfortable really was Tamara, who was really Desmond and I's co-worker at Cloud9. And she ended up being a behavioral therapist too, also. So she was kind of like awkward with the kids to the point that it was funny. And I saw that and I was like, oh wow, that's so cool. And I indirectly learned to do that from her, which made the interactions between the kids and I even more smoother. I feel. Then over time I just began to enjoy it. But I said that to say it wouldn't have happened if I didn't actually take that chance in the first place, even though I was uncomfortable with the whole situation to begin with. But one thing I learned about myself is that sometimes I could take chances for the wrong reasons. Mm-hmm. And those reasons usually include because people want me to, not because I want to. And not to completely erase everything I just said before that, because taking chances is good. Like, it's okay to take chances. Just make sure you want to do it. Don't do it for somebody else. And my ability to avoid doing things for myself and rather do it for other people has been one of the things to really attribute to my biggest failures. And one thing I never mentioned up here, like Des, I too had a drug charge similar to him when I turned 21. And really that mainly stemmed from me being there, and I wasn't supposed to be there in the first place. And I didn't listen to myself. Like, I'm not supposed to be there. I'm supposed to be somewhere else because I'm supposed to be at a party, but you want me to hang out with you and I'm already late as is. But I didn't stand up for myself, basically, which led to that failure. So doing things because someone wants me to do it is one of them, without taking much more time, I would say. My impatience is one of them too. And my laziness, because I know if I'm guilty of anything, it could be laziness, and I know sometimes I feel like I kind of deserve it, especially when I feel like I'm dealing with behaviors all week. I feel like I kind of want to have a day to myself, but at the same time, I know I'm supposed to do this movie review on the weekends, and on the weekends, this is the only time I'm going to have a chance to actually film this movie review, because on the weekdays, I'm not going to have time. So it's laziness, and then it's impatience too, but yeah.
Josh, I had no idea what the charge.
I know.
Hey, if you didn't know about mine, now you know as well. And put me on the spot.
At least you know he won't mention things that he don't need to mention.
Hey, I've appreciated everybody's input so far. I think, it's anybody listening, there's things have been said that you could take from everybody. But for me, this question was a little bit more, I'm not gonna say quick thought, but it was something that I just instantly thought of. And my response is, what I attribute my biggest success to is my ability to start whatever it is I finish. A lot of people, they'll start numerous things and then they'll put it on hold and they'll come back to it. For me, I've always had a desire to finish whatever it is I started. I don't like that thought of something being incomplete in the back of my mind. Case in point is, I'm not sure if you guys have listened before, but I have a 3-year-old son. I had my 3-year-old son when I was 22, starting my junior year at Old Dominion. So a lot of uncertainty with that time was, do I go into the military? What do I do? Do I get a full-time job? How do I make this work? And for me, I explored all of those options. I thought about going into the military, but I was like, you know what? I'm a year and a half left from graduating with my degree in political science, with hopes of going to law school, or I'm not gonna say hopes, but with dreams of going to law school. I could stick it out. So, I got a job as Josh mentioned, at Cloud9 as well. Became an assistant manager, working 75 hours every pay period, part-time, in addition to going to school full time and then carving that time out to spend with my son. So, you know, that's how it's always been to me. Anytime I start something, whether it be a project or, you know, anything with my son, I have to finish it. You know, another thing with me is that I have a agreement with my mother. I'm my son's mother. I don't have a court structured, how do I want to put it? Court structured order on how we parent our son. You know, one thing with me, and this will actually go into what I attribute my failures to as well, is one thing with me is if I can envision something, then I'm going to put forth my plan on what it is I'm envisioning. So, you know, with me, I always said, I don't need anyone to tell me what it is I need to do in this life. I know what it is I need to do. I just need to do it. So I said from the beginning, when my parents had their doubts, and her parents might have had their doubts as well, I said, unless shit truly hits the fan, we are going to communicate as adults, and we're going to do what it is necessary to give our son the most fruitful life in unfavorable circumstances. And, you know, that's something that I envision, that's something that I put forth, and that's something that to this day I take extreme pride in, because not many people who have separated from their child's mother can say, you know, I can call my son up at any time, and if he wants to come over, he can come over. You know, usually it's like, oh, I got to wait till the weekend, or I have to see if she's available, whatever. Like, my mom can come in randomly, and I could hit her up and say, hey, you know, my mom's in, can she get some time with Lucas? And it's, oh yeah, take him. It's like, you're glad to. And it's vice versa. I can call her mom anytime and, you know, talk to my son. She can call my mom if she ever wanted to, and talk to her son. So that's something that I take extreme pride in. And knowing that that's what I accomplished when I, you know, from 2017, when I said, I don't need anybody to tell me what to do, I'm gonna do it. But on the flip side of things, what I would attribute my failures to is not respecting my boundaries. And that can, you know, there's a vast array of things that you can attribute that to. That could be procrastination, you know, it could be things that you are doing to trigger your mental illnesses, whether it be anxiety or depression. And it's things that you know you should not have done, but you still chose to do it. And that will always be what kicks me in my ass, like not respecting my boundaries. Once I get into that you know, that state to where I'm no longer truly present and I'm more or less just going through the motions, and that's when I know, and I'll typically flip the switch right then and there to get myself out of it. But I have prolonged my you know, my higher learning, whether it been at Old Dominion or any job related licensings. Like, I've prolonged the amount of time it should have taken to get it, because I was not setting, you know, boundaries, whether it been having assignments due before or having assignments done before the due dates or anything of that nature. Things that I knew that I could accomplish if I truly wanted to, but not taking the time out to put those boundaries and that discipline. You know, as Larry said, you know, the having that direction and that willingness to get it done. Had I have been implementing that, I could have finished in 4 rather than, you know, 5.5.
So it seems like we've transitioned into doing failures as well. And I thought I did quite a deal of thinking about what I would attribute my failures to. And I'm pretty critical of myself. We've talked quite a bit about like our failures in the past, but I think I wanted to talk about something a little different this time. So Josh and Desmond, when we first started doing the Infusion BreakDown Show in 2018, that was right around the time where I was working with Austin, my roommate at the time. We were trying to start an app company, the Brogrammers, and we had the Nimble Nimbus app. Do you guys remember that? So I would say that was a failure, not in the sense of a total flop, because I did speak to him recently. Like, we're still cool. It's not like we had a falling out or anything like that. It's just that didn't take off in the direction that we wanted it to at the time. But I do feel like there's a lot of potential with both of us. Austin's an awesome programmer. We both went to ODU, and we both got computer science degrees. And so the way we organized the Brogrammers was he did a lot of the actual hands-on programming, and I was doing the creative direction. And so the reason that I say it was a failure was because I had the inability to focus on multiple things at once. So this kind of took priority over the Brogrammers, and I think it was the right call to make, just because of how involved I was with this in its initial inception, and then up until like now, really. And I still, like I said, I want to continue to do application development in the future and operate. But once I have a better control or grasp over managing different projects where you have to actually provide input and drive the direction of things, as opposed to just being a cog in a wheel saying, okay, somebody else is giving you orders and you go and do them. Because like people, I think it's really easy to downplay the creative process of coming up with innovative ideas and trying to do things that are new. Because it's like the saying says, there's nothing new under the sun. So anything that can be done has been done. But how are you going to make this marketable to people in a different way and leave your mark on the world, and kind of at least like make people, like give them some incentive to buy what you're selling, whether you're actually providing actual good or a service. So I would actually contribute that failure to, like I said, prioritization and focusing on, not the inability to focus on multiple things at once. And like I was alluding to earlier, we talked in extent on previous episodes about relationship failures, and I think that there's a number of reasons. I probably could give you a shorter list of reasons why I was successful, but I would say pride, boundaries, and I would say those are the main two, really. And those are things that I'm actively working on. I didn't want to take too much time to address this because I've spoken on those in the past.
One question I have is, how much does expectation go into any one of you guys' failure, and is it okay to have expectation?
So I'll answer that one because I've been working on the aspect of expectation just in my life in general. So personally, I move in seasons, and I feel like we all do move in seasons, yet I really do acknowledge the seasons in my life, because sometimes I sit back and really realize that this recurring conversation I'm having with myself or something like that is happening for a reason. So the recurring conversation I've been having with myself recently is the feeling of failure and how that pairs with my expectations. So I'm kind of interested that you even said that. So for me, I've learned that when I set expectations for something, especially things that I cannot control, that is when I feel more like a failure, or I feel like I've failed more attempts at a certain situation. So for instance, in relationships, I've noticed that if I have an expectation of how this relationship is going to go, and I go into that relationship with the expectation of how it's going to go, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to feel like it failed, because of the simple fact that I had that expectation going into it. So I've tried to teach myself that instead of having expectations of how the outcome should be, more so have expectations of how I plan to seek growth through each situation. I think my phone went blank at the end, but y'all caught that right.
We heard you.
Yeah, we got it. Okay, nice.
Cool.
So the topic of expectations has been an ongoing debate that runs like throughout the thread of these episodes. And like yourself, I do think that there's a large utility to the fact that you have expectations, and what you were just saying about imposing them on yourself. So I guess, I mean, based off a similar answer, Josh, I would say giving the expectations to myself. And I do think that I don't really see anything wrong with expectations in terms of being internal. When you start giving other people expectations, that's when you run into things. So like the behaviors that I set forth into achieving a certain goal, or the standards that I have to treat other people, that's an expectation. Or how I allow other people to treat me, that's an expectation. There's certain things you're just not going to do. So that's when I do think they come into play. But for me to, let's say we're business partners, and for me to entrust you with a certain amount of something to do, or responsibility to something that you specialize in, and then going into micromanage, and I don't like this little thing that you did, or I feel like that's when you start to encroach on having those expectations in a negative way. And then what Montae was saying about relationships as well, it's like there's not really a destination per se if you start to perceive things in that way. It's more so about the experience that you're getting along the way and what you're doing in the moment. So it's like not saying if this relationship isn't this one thing that is a failure, maybe it doesn't go your way and it actually turns out better for you, you know? So I think by having expectations, you do set up criteria for failure, but I don't think there's anything innately wrong with that, because you're able to take that as feedback and get something else that's closer approximating success.
Okay. I was just wondering, because I thought of the question when you was mentioning your programmers and how I think you said it didn't blow up how you thought it would be, but you was more about you prioritizing you taking your time, I guess, more about it, rather than it becoming the next Angry Birds or something like that. So that's what I was thinking. But I was thinking, how is it okay to expect, like, say, let's use the programmers thing as an example. Like, is it okay if you started, is it okay to expect it to be like the next big thing? And then if it's not, like, or is that just ambition? How does that go?
I would say yes, because it gives me something to aim at. Like, I should be self-aware enough to realize that that's not going to happen overnight. But for me to have that vision to say that, okay, well, Nimble Nimbus, our first app, that was going to be something that, like you said, the next Angry Birds or something of that caliber, I think that's a hell of a goal to aim at. And that's when expectations are good. But if you are constantly like checking it, like kind of like when people work out, like you're looking to gain muscle mass, but you're constantly stepping on the scale like every 5 minutes, of course you're not going to gain any weight. It's like, okay, let's measure in a more reasonable increment. So let's check monthly or something like that, and then evaluate and allow me to switch my trajectory to get to that point that I set out.
I can add to that as well. So for the pop-up shop, for the Mind Your Business pop-up shop in October, we added first of all, we already do Black-owned businesses and performers. And so then we added a drive-in cinema and movie truck component to it. And we showed Black Panther at the end of the night. We thought selling those tickets, we expected it to be a hit, and we did not sell out. And I think we didn't lose too much, but we barely broke even, which was still good. But you know, Josh, like you were saying, the expectation, we definitely had it, but it's like reality set in. And so I think that if we had measured it first, maybe we wouldn't have been as disappointed. So I think research definitely goes into, depending on what it is, I'm speaking from a business standpoint, whether or not your business or your event is going to succeed, or your app is going to succeed. I say look at the numbers and look at the research. And then so basically see if it's attainable. And then like I was saying with the pop-up shop, me and my co-founder Robert Garris, we had to step back and think, okay, we had this event and it didn't turn out like we wanted to, but on the brighter side of things, we ain't never had no event like this before. There's never been a drive-in cinema that I've seen Black-owned showing a Black movie at that, with food trucks and all. So we had to look at it from the grand scale of things, and then from a marketing and promoting standpoint and a community relationship building standpoint, that was a win. So that was success. Although the drive-in theater didn't really take off like we wanted to, the indirect impact was a hit. So I say be thankful for the small steps as well, because you may not have hit that big goal, but there's still beauty in taking the small steps to get to the end goal.
Nice.
That's awesome. I like you were just saying, I've never heard anyone combine those particular things together, and so I really hope that you continue to pursue that and have more of those events in the future. I'd love to attend one of them.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I'm still in that. Just let you know now, I'm still in it.
You still in what?
I'm still in that idea. That's great.
And he got honey too.
The pop-up shop?
No, I have a pop-up shop. I'm also saying I'm still in the drive-in theater idea.
Oh,
that
bro,
was smart.
this partner, bro. Last part, I'm down. We got the area and everything. We can definitely build. But are we talking about our failures, our personal failures?
Yeah.
Okay, so I would say that, I'm gonna just say this. My personal failure that I think, again, looking back and doing a summary, I have this, like, I know that if I am disciplined, my failure is discipline. I'm not really disciplined. But the thing is, it's not like I don't know what to do. I know exactly what I'm supposed to do when I'm supposed to do it. But I just know if I do that, then it's going to move me up the scale to a place where, like Montae was saying, I feel like I don't have control because you get more in the limelight. So expect, like you guys are, this is episode 78, right?
Correct.
This is episode 78. So y'all keep going, you know, being consistent, being disciplined. You're going to eventually blow up. You know, that's the expectation. You're going to eventually blow up. But then in blowing up, you have to continue that type of rapport. You got, because you're going to 4 or 5 stars, you know, you guys are going to be great. So you got to continue hitting that goal. And so that's my fear. It's like, okay, we put out these pop-up shops, right? We planned on doing just one, and then the community bid on, and now we're at our 6th one. We're about to do our 7th one, depending on how COVID is. So now there's the expectation. We're in our 7th one, and then I'm thinking, okay, if we continue to be disciplined about this, then we're gonna eventually blow up. So it's just me of like fear of letting go of what's comfortable, and I call it a slave mentality, honestly, because it's being used to what I have, because I don't want to be comfortable. You know, I'm comfortable in my 9 to 5. I'm a school counselor. I'm comfortable in my 9 to 5, but I know if I put in work on my t-shirts and the pop-up shop and everything, all my entrepreneurial efforts, I know I will be able to quit it. But it's like the things that come along with that, it's like, man, I think I'm gonna just settle for right here, right now. And that's being very, very honest. But this year has definitely taught me that just being comfortable is not an option for me personally, and me being vulnerable with you guys. My father passed in February, unexpectedly. I was in Kuwait, flew back, and he ended up passing. And we knew nothing about it. We didn't know that it was gonna happen. And so that just changed my whole perspective on life completely. And he was 48, young. Changed my perspective on life completely. And so that failure that I just told you about, expecting to be great, that's slowly diminishing, because it's like the things that you know you're supposed to do, your destiny, you can't ignore from that because it's always attached from you. You can't really run from your destiny. You can't run from a podcast and from speaking if you know that's what you're supposed to do. You know? So that's what I say my failure is.
And for the very same, you wanna go ahead, Montae?
I was just gonna say to speak on my own failure. I've learned, at least for myself, that I have to stop accepting things as a failure and more so accept that was my fate in this situation. Because a lot of things that I felt like was a fallback was really a setup for something for me to move forward even further later on down the line. I would get, a year or so later and look back and go, wait, if that fallback didn't happen, I wouldn't have had this much room for growth in this area for me to go and do this, which made me move even further than I was at first. And so, I've had to look back and just realize that, at least for myself, I feel like, the vibrations that come out of my mouth are very powerful. So if I look at a situation and go, that was a failure, then I'm accepting that was a failure. But if I look back at something and go, that was a lesson. That was a lesson. That might have been a blessing, really. I just gotta wait to see. It comes out that way. It might not look like that. Even when I'm saying it, I'm trying to convince myself. Like, I'm really trying to convince myself. And, when I first started doing this, I was like, man, this feels so stupid. Yet I realized that the things that I was stopping myself from calling a failure, and I was calling it a lesson and a blessing in the making, really became a lesson and a blessing in the making. And it's crazy, actually. Business, pretty much what we're working on now for my business is sidetracked, but still, what we're working on right now for my business is actually a build up off of that. We failed multiple times trying to get this thing going. I heard you say something about an app. We tried to have an app that was going to be a market space for us to sell Black and brown products, and we wanted to have that before we even got the store going, which we realized was not probably the best way of doing it. Yet, through all of the blessings and lessons that we went through, we actually developed a better structure of how we could run our businesses together with other Black and brown businesses that we want to partner with. And so we actually started a project that we're working on now called Blessings and Lessons, where we will have warehouse space that we're going to go and purchase warehouse space in rundown Black and brown communities that are being pretty much completely forgotten about. And we're rejuvenating them and turning them into market space for Black and brown businesses in those areas. And also using some nonprofit aspect to also bring in some housing for some of the local homeless folks that we will be also trying to help get into the entrepreneurship field. And we call that Blessings and Lessons because we literally went through so many blessings and lessons to get to the point of where we are. And we were like, you know, we just want everybody that wants to get into the entrepreneurship field to realize that it's just going to take a bunch of blessings and lessons. Don't count it as a failure. Count it as a lesson or a blessing and keep moving, because that's how you really grow that.
No, I totally agree. It's because just shifting your perspective in that way, the past is complete. There's nothing you could do about it. So you can, like you said, embrace it as a failure, and that's not really an opportunity for growth. That kind of cuts all that off. Whereas if you look at it as a lesson, then you're forcing yourself to think about alternate routes forward to achieve a similar goal, or still achieve the goal in spite of your past failure or shortcoming. So Larry, you had also spoke about the slave mentality, and then you falling victim to not wanting to be in the spotlight due to the expectation. But I thought this really brings back a Jay-Z interview that I had seen somewhat recently. And I don't think the spotlight is necessarily a bad thing, because he was saying there's certain things that he doesn't like about his current lifestyle. So like he wants to go eat dinner with his family and people want to take pictures and autographs. But he doesn't mind doing that because who he is and things he does allows him to be in certain rooms, in certain conversations, in certain spaces. So it's a trade-off. It's because the lifestyle he lives affords him to do so much good. He doesn't mind a little bit of bad that comes with it, because that's what he actually wants. It's just part and parcel of it. So like what you're saying, if you're stepping into your purpose, there's nothing wrong with that because you're built for it.
Right. And that's exactly what I'm noticing, man. I've been in my crib just because I like to meditate, I like to pray, and I've just been silent, I've just been listening. That's I think you just confirmed it, as a matter of fact. So thank you. I appreciate that. But yeah, I definitely agree.
Another question I want to ask is, what do you guys value more, your successes or your failures?
So given that I just said that I don't acknowledge failures, I would still say I value my lessons more, because when I value my blessings a lot, I become very big-headed. Like my brother Larry just said, you know, discipline for me is hard. So one way for me to stay disciplined is by making myself my own underdog. I have to continuously tell myself, like, we have a lot of work to do. I'm the kind of person that I will close my store. I always close at 6 p.m. I close the store at 6 p.m. I'm usually, as soon as I get off, I'm coming home to make products or doing research on what else I need to be doing for my business. And that's going on until 6 a.m. And then I go to sleep and I might wake up at like 9 and I'm like, all right, time to get up and go back to the store again. We're going to get this thing going all over again. And that's because I look back at all my lessons the failures, quote unquote, but my lessons, I look back at those and look at, the things that cause those shortcomings. And usually it's laziness or something like that. So, basically, whenever I look back at my blessings, I get comfortable. When I look back at my successes, I get comfortable. And I'm like, okay, I did that. I kind of throw it on like a fur coat almost, like, yeah, I'm good. I open the store up, we good. No, it's the beginning. And you just quoted Jay-Z. It was either Jay-Z or Puff. One of them said, I was about 16 years old when I seen this, and it stuck with me ever since. One of them said, it's 24 hours to a day. We all have the same 24 hours to a day. What you do with your 24 hours and what I do with my 24 hours will make a huge difference. So if you spend 12 of your hours sleep and 12 of your hours doing a little bit of work, and I spend 24 of my hours going ham, we're going to see who get paid the most at the end of the day. We're going to see.
It sounds like a Puffy thing. It sounds like
exactly. I think so too. I think so too. But basically just saying that to say, you know, with me, I use my 24 to really look back sometimes. And the brother just said he likes to meditate and reflect. That's exactly what I do when I'm sitting in the house by myself. And, you know, so part of my time is used to look back at the things that was my lessons. You know, I might dwell on them, but instead of me dwelling on them and just saying, man, that was a shortcoming, I go, all right, that was a lesson. So what did I learn from that? What did I learn from that? Okay, so this is what I learned from it. Okay, so let's study on what we need to do with this then. So yeah.
Josh, to answer your question about which one do I value more, I think about value as in how do we actually behave? And so just through my personal experience with the amount of time that I spend reflecting on the past, I would definitely say the failures, because I've spent an exhaustive amount of time picking myself apart and looking at past situations to see how could I possibly have done better. And sometimes that's to my own detriment. But as we spoke in the episode with Anthony Garcia about being more present, that's something that I feel like I'm definitely more in control of now. But I still do think there's more utility in looking at the failures than success, because success is like what you've done right. But failure is still an opportunity for growth, because it's something that you could be all the much better if you can get that correct as well.
Definitely. Which will add to more successes.
Exactly. But Montae, I really like what you were saying about like the attitude that gets fostered by focusing on your success, because you think you got it like that. And like one thing that I've learned about life is don't ever think you got it like that, because when you do, life is a funny way to remind us that we don't.
Yep. You get comfortable.
You know, it never fails that every time I get big-headed, something comes right around and smacks me upside my head. And I never see it coming every time. It's usually like, yeah, everything is great. It's lovely. We good. And even if everything is great at the time, I'm still like, okay, what do we have to work on, Montae? Everything is great, but how can we make everything even greater? Like, you know, because that moment that you get comfortable in life, man, it's scary. It's scary because you know something is about to come around and make you very uncomfortable all over again.
You don't have a say in it at that point.
You don't.
It's either you're uncomfortable on your own volition or life's gonna do it for you.
I think about it like going to sleep. Once you go to sleep, you're out of control of what happens around you.
That's a great way to put it.
Ta-Nehisi Coates, he put that in his book, the letter that he wrote to his son. He talked about how valuable the black body is. And ever since I read that, I started thinking about when we're asleep, because I used to be this. It's like when you travel a lot, you know, you can't afford a hotel, you pull into the rest stop in the car, and then before I'm closing my eyes, I'm thinking, wow, my black body is left unconscious in this car, you know, and my black body is valuable, but they treat it like it's invaluable at the same time. So thank you for that thought, Montae.
Were you about to say something, Des?
I was actually gonna go the other way, man. Like I kind of hold on to my successes a little bit more, just because it's always a reminder of what I'm capable of. Like I think everybody has that season of doubt to where, you know, things may not be going the way you would have liked for them to, or maybe even on to take it to a greater extreme, like the way you expected it to. So for me, it's like I actually try and break down the why. And sometimes you might not be able to figure out that why. And instead of just getting, you know, caught up on that why, I always remind myself of what I'm capable of. And the way I do that is by looking at those successes, because I think with every success, there's a trail of failure behind it that ultimately led to that success. Kind of like how both Montae and Larry, like they both provided, you know, not examples, but they've basically said that themselves. Just regurgitating that. For me, it's like I understand that it's a process. I always think back to, you know, Kobe's finals interview when I think they were like, "You guys are up 3-1. Are you guys like, are you not happy?" He was like, "Job's not finished." And so I always think of that. I don't even dwell too much on my like struggles. I always identify why it went that way, and I kind of, like I said earlier, always attribute it to my boundaries and me knowing that if anything I feel in life, I know it was my fault. I know it's because I didn't give 110% of myself. So if I can easily make peace with that thought, I immediately grab those images of success to bounce back, sooner rather than later.
I feel what you mean by that, Desmond, because, especially as Black men, we always have something telling us what we did wrong. There's always something telling us, where our shortfall was, or we're always reminded ourselves that we have to be 10 times better than the white man in front of us and all of that. Yet sometimes we do need that time to sit back and go, hey, look, remember who you are now. Exactly. Remember what you got done. And I acknowledge that because I just had that moment this weekend. I was just telling my friend, like, I need to get back to realizing who I am. Like, and realize I'm some pressure. I'm really some pressure, so
exactly.
I feel that. Yeah, that's something that my dad always said. Anytime like I'm having, these conversations with him, and he's just like, sometimes you gotta call a spade, man. Like you're not a scrub. Like know who you are, and that's just something that has stuck with me. Like he was telling me that when I was like 18, wonder in the mix of relationship issues in conjunction with, not knowing what I wanted to do in college. Like that's the one piece of advice that he gave me that still sticks, to this day.
It sounds a lot like you're really measuring them both at the same time, Des, but you're looking at the end point and then you're looking at what got you to that end point. So I feel you're really looking at them both at the same time, really valuing them both equally, I would feel, really. But you're just looking at the end point, really. Yeah. So to really my answer to the question is really, I think we should really value them as much as we can equally, because like Brian said, if we focus too much on the failures, then we're going to be completely down on ourselves. Because I think it's very hard to like just forget about your successes. Like even if they're small, it's like really, really. Not hard. It's really easy to just forget about your successes. So that's how I feel about that. So, and then like Montae said, don't get too big-headed if you're just thinking about your successes. So I think what Desmond said was perfect. Just thinking about what got you there, and then just making sure you follow that same road in the future. So yeah. Anything else you guys want to add?
Knowing who you are, and then also knowing what can possibly happen too. So I guess it's all about checking yourself and not allowing your ego to take over. I actually did have 2 follow-up questions, one for Larry and then one for Montae. So Larry, prior to us starting recording this episode, you had spoke about traveling as something that you recommend that everybody do outside of the States specifically in their lifetime. And so how much of your success as a counselor or throughout your various other business endeavors would you attribute to your traveling outside of the state, or traveling outside of the country rather?
I just traveled outside the country for this counseling assignment. So that was I left August 2019. My only flight was to Miami for spring break during college. That was the only time I had been on a plane. But so 2019 came around, August 2019, got on the flight, left. And so when I was there, it was a culture shock, total culture shock. I don't know if you know anything about the Middle East or Kuwait, but bars, clubs, none of that. Because it's an Islamic country. So the laws are completely different than American laws. So I say it again?
A theocracy.
Yes, sir. And so here I am in Kuwait, and I want to leave because, again, it's a culture shock. My girlfriend was in the States, my family was in the States, and then I was unwilling to be disciplined and unwilling to adjust. But I say all that to say I stayed there because when I got back in December, came back in December for winter break, got my mind right, because sometimes you just need to hug your family members. So I came back, hugged my family members, told them I was gonna dip, went back to Kuwait, and then I came back in February because of COVID. And I haven't been back since. So my stuff is still in Kuwait and I still have to get that. But you asked me, what did I learn? from all of that and applying it to business, I have ran a pop-up shop remotely while in Kuwait. My co-founder, my partner, ran it in Norfolk, and I was on Zoom just like this, and I was on the screen in downtown Norfolk. I had never done that before. So we were virtual before we even had to be virtual. So that is, again, that's a success. And that's one thing that I learned that I attribute to my business. Another thing was, I tried while in Kuwait. Kuwait is close to different countries, so it's a prime location for traveling. So I traveled to Egypt, walked amongst the pyramids. You know, as an alpha, that's very important. Walked amongst the pyramids, traveled Egypt. From there, I saw Egypt's conditions, and it made me think about how the conditions in Kuwait, in Egypt, in America, and all around the world, the conditions, the negative conditions are shared by colored people. And I think that's one thing that we had to, that Black people in America have to understand, because we have a very American understanding of Black culture and Black life, not knowing that I met Africans in Kuwait that know about what we know about what's going on here, or that are very conscious about Africa's status. And so bringing that knowledge here, it makes me multidimensional. When I think, it's not just thinking from an American standpoint, like I'm thinking globally. It's a global mindset. And I think when you think about not just how you can impact the local community, but globally, and use the knowledge and the perspectives and the conversations that you got from there. Like when I opened my mouth, it was to the point where I would see somebody and they would instantly think I was African. Then when I would open my mouth and speak English, they have to stand back and try to figure out where am I from. So it's stuff like that, because they're not used to seeing us. Or I'm in the market and they're trying to upsell me because I'm American and they think I have money, because all Americans apparently have money. So taking that knowledge, bringing it back here, feeding it to my kids as a school counselor who have parents never been on a flight, yet alone out the state, bringing that to the pop-up shop. Now I have my followers, my friends and my colleagues that I met in Kuwait are now following me on Instagram, seeing what I'm doing here. Now we trying to settle down, we trying to link and do something internationally. So it's a lot that can come from traveling, because my parents have never traveled overseas except to the Bahamas. And I think that was a boat at that was a cruise. So I definitely encourage traveling because it's invaluable, you know? It's something that you can't take back that experience like you can take back shoes or destroy your shoes. We wear flight tickets on our shoes. We wear clothes the same price as hotels in Dubai, you know? So that's how I like to think.
Well, absolutely. I'm glad you expanded on that in that way. Like, I'm a huge advocate for traveling myself. Like, even from myself being from a really small rural area, there were certain things that in order for me to be where I'm at today, I had to leave. Like, for example, working in the tech sector, there aren't many technology jobs in the area. And so it's a matter of, there's certain advantages for me moving away. Like, I still got a lot of love for the area, but it's the fact that in order to get to where I wanted to be, I had to relocate. And I think a lot of times we get too comfortable with where we're at. So I feel like I have a mental countdown for when I feel like I've gotten the most out of the area where I'm at before I need to move on. But I think traveling does allow for a renewed perspective and give you a different lens by which to examine different scenarios. And I think
it's exposure. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, you're fine.
Exposed.
I definitely I guess we could sync up later and talk more about your experience while you were in Africa, because that's one of my major destinations I want to travel to.
Oh, word, definitely. Yeah, Egypt is a wonder, and it's not everything that we read in the textbooks neither. It's something that you have to walk and see, most definitely experience. But I was about to say something. Oh, that flight to Miami, I had seen a pop-up shop. That was the first time I had ever seen a pop-up shop. I walked in and it was music being played, vendors. I grabbed me a drink and I was with my girl and we was just vibing, and got back, put that vision was in my back pocket, and then pulled it out, you know, a couple months later, and then boom. So vision. That's why exposure is very, very, very important. And don't, like, your eyes, your ears, they are the ear gates to your soul. Like, you got projects, like you see something, and think about all the information that we took from talking to each other. You know, now we're gonna go and build ideas off of that. So this is great. You know, I just want to say that this is a great opportunity to build a dialogue.
Right. It's just like people think of the word contagious in a negative connotation with specifically now with the viruses out and about, but also ideas are contagious. And just like the idea that we operate in different circles, like the three of us, we've never interacted with you two guys, but now there's a cross-pollination of ideas. So you can take something and it'd be a benefit to you later. And then so maybe you talk to somebody else and then we can loop them back in. It's like we're building a network.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like random knowledge.
Hey Larry, did I hear you say you was an alpha, bro?
Yes, sir. I saw your wristband. I was gonna build with you after.
Oh, sister, the good bros.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And then Montae, I had a question for you. First off, congratulations on the opening of 40 Villages this past week. We talked a little bit about that before we got on. What was the catalyst behind 40 Villages? I understand the concept. It's a space where you provide goods from Black and brown businesses, but what was the driving motivator behind you opening that space up?
So, first, you know, when I first went to college, I just knew that I wanted to be a businessman in general. I noticed that a lot of the things that we wanted to do as far as politically could not get done if we did not support our communities financially as well. A lot of things that we want to see get done is not going to get done until we can financially come together and show cohesiveness. And not just show cohesiveness, but use it to our advantage and actively act on it. So, you know, as soon as I think I believe it was the Mike Brown incident happened, you know, I did a lot of research on just what we could have been doing and what we could be doing and what's not being done. And the main thing is honestly just looking at our economic system and how we don't support each other. You know, I studied Islam for a few years while I was at ODU, and connecting with a lot of the brothers that I met through Islam. A lot of them owned their own stores and things like that, and they would always say, you know, we don't understand African Americans because well, first of all, a lot of them were from different countries, and they were saying, you know, we don't understand African Americans because, you know, we have a cousin that come over that doesn't have any money. If he even knows or if he even meets someone that is from his country and they have a store, they're giving them money to open a store regardless. And they're going to make sure that it works. They're going to make sure that they put together a system that runs, and they're going to make sure that they bring in the revenue that's needed for the person that gave the money to get paid back and for the other person to keep going. And they've always told me, we don't understand why you guys don't do that for each other. And so I say, you know, that's got to change. And then that was when I first realized I needed to do something that would help the community. Yeah, it bounced around from so many different industries, honestly, until we realized that, you know, we needed all industries involved. We needed all hands on deck. We needed not just the for-profit businesses, but the nonprofit as well. We needed the schools. We needed the local football teams. We needed everybody that is supporting the Black and brown community and that's part of the Black and brown community at the table together. And so I still didn't know how I wanted to structure it though. And so when I graduated from ODU, and I realized that there was a lot of people we were graduating with, specifically white people that we were graduating with, that were going straight to these nice jobs. I mean, you know, I double majored in criminology and sociology. I graduated with 2 bachelor's degrees. I was on the pre-law track, concentrated in social welfare, all of that. Still know so many more Caucasian people that did the same classes as me, the same degrees as me, and they came out making so much more money, already set up, and that was because they were well connected within their community. We don't have that. And so right then and there, I realized I wanted to make something. I wanted to make a business. I wanted to make not just a business, but a network where we could connect. It started off as us thinking about connecting Black and brown college graduates to the industries of their choice, by connecting them to people of the Black and brown community that are already running businesses in that fashion. And so that was how we started off. Some people call it a staffing agency, but we weren't really staffing per se. We were just connecting people, honestly, just making connections, and we weren't really getting paid off of that. It was just mostly out of the genuineness of our heart. And then from there, we realized that there was an actual market for what we were doing, which is pretty much working in the supply chain industry, which is where we're getting at now with the store and things of that nature. Because, you know, as we started to get into just looking at businesses and all of the businesses that we own and that we need to support, one of the main things that we don't support as far as Black-owned businesses is Black producers. Black producers make up a huge portion of the market, and we don't realize that because they go to Walmart and they go to all these other stores before they come to our stores, because first of all, we don't have any stores for them to bring their stuff to, and we don't have the avenue nor the networks for them to promote themselves through, for people to say, hey, there's a Black farmer down the street from you guys, y'all should buy your cabbage and your corn from there. So that was where we started to realize that we needed to create an actual factual network, something that was tangible, something that people can come to. And so we realized that, you know, the Black producers, so not just the farmers, but the people who were just making things in general, so clothes, all of that stuff, they didn't have the brick and mortar to promote their stuff in front of people's face. Secondly, they didn't have the network to connect with other Black and brown businesses and Black and brown communities to be able to grow through that. Because I mean, we're at this kick now where we really do love to support our own businesses and our own people, but we don't have the connections to be able to do so. We don't communicate enough to be able to do so. And so what we ended up doing with 40 Villages was creating a network of businesses that span from farmers to truckers to plumbers to designers, all across the board, to pretty much try to lock down everything that we already spend money on and putting that into being Black owned. So that was how we started off with the store. And then that's also how I got into hemp farming and things like that, because, you know, going back to being producers, a lot of people don't know that hemp, beyond using it for medicinal purposes, also helps with things like fiber. So the fiber that you use for your clothes, you can use it for biodiesel fuel. You can use it to even hone electricity. And who is the main person that farms hemp or marijuana or whatever you want to call it? Us. So we figured, with Virginia rolling out these laws now that are pretty much, I would say slowly, but really it's happening pretty fast, where they're legalizing more and more of the plant and in more and more ways, and soon it'll be recreational. We realized that if we don't make a push now to get more and more Black people educated to how we can be involved in this industry, we will be out back when they really open these things up. Because you know, when I got my license for growing and dealing hemp, it was $50. Once they changed hemp to being medicinal for THC, the license went up to $250. So once they go to, so that's a $50 to $250 jump. So now once they go to recreational, the license is going to probably go to $2,000 or maybe even more. I'm seeing in some states where it's recreational that the license has gone from a few hundred to $23,000. So, you know, they're gonna make sure that they get their money and cut out the people that they don't want in. So that's just another part of us making sure that we get involved in producing and really starting our own stuff. We can't say that we have a 100% Black-owned business if, you know, the fiber that you make your clothes with is still white-owned. You can't say that you have a 100% Black-owned business if you're still paying a white company for electricity. We can't be 100% Black-owned yet. So yes, we're getting all into that. We're helping with Black truckers, helping getting more Black truckers doing more transits and things like that. And they're doing transits to white-owned companies. The thing is, though, hey, if you're a white-owned company, but you're supporting mostly black-owned businesses through your company, then you're still part of 40 Villages because you're an ally. You're giving your money to our community because we give our money to their community all the time. So for them to take that money back out of their community and give it right back, it's pretty much like somebody saying, yo, hey, you gave me a little bit too much money, here you go. And so that was our thought process behind 40 Villages, and that's how we got to where we are.
Kudos to you, bro. And your essential, so you got essential services and businesses.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Definitely.
I would say, you know, also COVID took us off. I'm a beekeeper as well. And so, you know, a lot of people don't know that honey is a natural source of hydrogen peroxide.
Yep.
And actually the natives used to use honey for cleaning their cuts. Excuse me. And so if you have a cold or anything like that, and it's like a sinus infection or things like that, or just some kind of infection within your nasal and throat passages, honey is a great source to clean those cuts and those wounds out. Because when you're coughing, like these people with COVID, you know, their throat is dry, they're not producing any mucus to soothe their throat, so they're coughing and they're scratching their throats up a lot, and then they sneeze and all of that stuff, and all of this is also becoming inflamed, and then you still have the virus that's floating through all of that. So then what ended up happening was people were finding out that not only was honey a natural source of hydrogen peroxide, but CBD is also a good way of relieving your symptoms without having really harsh side effects. You know, when you take NyQuil and things like that, you know, you relieve your symptoms, but then you go to sleep or you're just mad high. CBD does the same thing as far as relieving your symptoms, and you're not going to get high. And so it helped a lot of people who were trying to kick addictions and things like that, that needed some kind of medicine to help them. Obviously, there's no cure for COVID right now. And a lot of these people don't want to take NyQuil because they may have an addiction to methamphetamines or whatever. And so, you know, with the honey, there's a natural source of something cleaning your body and restoring the natural state of, you know, the fatty tissues and things like that in your body. And then the CBD is relieving the symptoms. And so, like I said, you know, once COVID happened, a lot of people were going in about that. And then once they realized I supported Black businesses in general through my business, it was like, oh, so not only is he helping people get better, but he's also helping people build their business. We have to support. And I woke up one day to like about 200 DMs, and I realized that somebody had like posted me on their page. Somebody was like very influential or whatever had posted me on their page, and then more people kept posting me from there, and then just more people posting me, and God was just good from there because I ended up leaving corporate. I was like, you know, I had to step out on faith, and I'm still, you know, trying to make ends meet. At the same time, though, like I said, God is great because I'm not homeless. Y'all see, I'm in the house right now. My lights are on. My stomach's pretty full. So I mean, you know, I'm still making it, working off myself. And you know, even the people that worked at my job, they didn't believe me when I said that we were going to do this. They didn't believe me when I said that we were about to open up the store by the end of 2020. They didn't believe anything that I said. Even when I said something to them about getting my hemp license, they kind of like laughed, if anything. And it's crazy because now I check my story and they don't even watch my stories anymore because they see I got that store opened up. So I mean, you know, I'm not being spiteful or anything, but you know what I'm saying? Just saying, you know, for whoever may be watching this, people are always going to tell you what sounds crazy. And if they don't tell you that your idea sounds crazy, it's not good enough. Keep trying. Because you need people to tell you that it sounds crazy so that way you know that it's not something that has already been done. It can't be something that can be imagined because then somebody can steal it and it's not going to be original. So, you know, with all that being said, this was all just a step of faith. Blessings and lessons, man.
No, I appreciate you for sharing that. Thanks, man. That's awesome. Like what you're doing for like the Black community in terms of, I'm also a real big advocate for the idea of Black economics. So like we have to have the finances to back the change that we want. So becoming more insular and supporting ourselves like other communities do. Like once Black Tuesday happened, I thought about what could I actually do besides posting a stupid black square on my timeline. Like I did that, but I said, what was the subsequent action that could actually support that? So that's why we started implementing the Black-owned business of the week segment. And so kind of like saying, okay, we have, for example, Tay's Honey. This is the Black-owned business of the week, expanding the reach of that, and just like you said, building that network to a lesser degree, because we don't have like a brick and mortar store. We're not producing goods like you are in this sense, but we have a similar objective to what we're working towards.
Exactly. And see, you know, just that mindset of itself, somebody would have thought that was a failure because they realized that they just posted a blank screen and that was it. And it's like, oh, I didn't do anything that actually helped. Man, that was a failure. Instead, you took that lesson and said, all right, so how can we do something? And a few people did that. And that was actually another thing that helped our business grow because, you know, people posted, hey, here's a business that promotes Black business, y'all. And they also make their own products. Check them out. So, yeah. Shout out to you, man.
Take that. I'm taking stuff.
That's nice. Anything else you guys want to add? Des? No? Larry?
No.
Good?
I love the idea though, the fact that y'all put on Black businesses and you sell your own products too. I might have to look into that idea as well.
Mutual stealing.
Collaboration.
Right, collaboration. I was looking at your Instagram. Where is your building at? Where are you based at?
We're located at 5731 New Kent Highway in New Kent County, Virginia. It's right between Richmond and Williamsburg. So actually the store that we are set up in is very historical. My great-grandfather opened that store up years ago. And he was actually one of the first Black store owners in the county. And if you guys are familiar with civil rights cases, you had the Brown versus Board of Education that desegregated the schools, yet it said at an all deliberate speed. And then you had the Green versus the County of New Kent case, which was where they said that they needed to desegregate the schools expeditiously, and they needed to make sure that they were putting an equal amount of Black teachers as well as white teachers, so that way they could easily accommodate the Black students that were coming into these schools, and they wouldn't feel such a culture shock. My grandfather was one of the influential people behind that, and he was influential because of that store that I just opened up in. A lot of people came and shopped at that store. 95% of his customers were white, not Black. And so, you know, when they made this push for that case, they actually had a lot of respect from the people in the area because they knew the family that was behind this case. And so, I was honored that I was even allowed to open up in that store. So many people come by and they say, you know, man, do you know what your grandfather used to do in here, man? He had such a great store. And I'm like, I just pray that I can stand up to the same, you know, level of what this man was able to do, because he had his own grocery store in there. They also had a car shop on the side of the store. It's still there. They had a hair shop in the back, as well as it's a hair salon along with the hair school. So my granddad was running the grocery store and the car shop, and he was selling dogs out the back. And then my grandmother had both the hair salon and the hair school in the shed in the back of that. So, you know, family of hustlers, man. Family of hustlers that just learn how to take in all trades and really, you know, focus on helping their community. And so, you know, it was, like I said, it was a blessing to be able to use that building. Every time people come and ask me about that building, I'm quick to show them a picture of my great granddad and say, hey, this is the man that kicked it off right here.
Nice.
Honorable.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
You gotta protect that
at all costs. At all costs. And that was that. That was why we decided to open the business up in there, so that way we could, you know, pay off mortgage and things like that, and just keep the building up and going, and, you know, hopefully keep it going for the next generation of store owners in our family.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. But thank you guys for coming on the podcast. It's been a great discussion. Thank you, Montae. Thank you, Larry. Come back, please. Definitely. But we usually end with the album of the week. So Des, you got an album of the week for us?
Yeah, we're gonna take it back. I think we're a little bit over a decade from now, or a decade ago. But my album of the week is Kendrick Lamar's "Overly Dedicated." I mean, I need new stuff to keep me going in the gym. I'm really big into fitness, so you know, when a lot of the new stuff isn't cutting it, I'll go back to what used to get me through my days in high school, and I still vividly remember, you know, being on the bus listening to that mixtape, you know, through my headset.
Man, it's crazy that you even mentioned that, man.
You a real one, bro. A lot of people don't remember Overly Dedicated, yet alone even heard it.
Yes. Real fans only.
Appreciate you.
Real fans only.
Nice. But yeah, if you guys like the discussion, don't forget to hit the like button. And we're going to see you guys next week. Peace.
But while you're here, be sure to check out other great content from the Breakdown crew, including previous episodes of the podcast, Joshua vs. Movies, Joshua vs. Music, and of course, haven't forgotten about my plant lovers, Feel the Love. Just check out this begonia.